Do you agree with Martin George that the Commission of Inquiry is just for show? We had 17 people voting in the allotted time. 12 of you said yes, you think the Commission of Inquiry is just for show. Well, you agreed with Martin George. I shouldn't say that you're saying it. You agreed. And 5 of you said no, you do not agree. Of course, you can continue to vote on this poll throughout the day through all programming, and we'll give you the final results come tomorrow morning, which will be Friday because today is Thursday and the weekend begins tonight, people, at a second after midnight, just in case you forgot or didn't remember. So I heard the interview. Well, you would have heard the interview with Karen Nunes to share. A little occupied at the time, so I didn't weigh into that interview much. But I know part of what the judge would have raised, why he didn't grant the injunction, if my memory serves me correct, is the issue of him not seeing that they substantiated enough that they would have suffered some damage because of the election being held over 3 days. In other words, he felt that they didn't elaborate enough on the issue of in them or the candidates incurring any damage or any unfairness as a result of the extension of the election over the 3 days. So he felt that didn't meet the standard for the injunction to be granted, in his opinion, even though, of course, he made other comments with regard to the substantial arguments that he felt did have validity that should still be aired before the court, as would have been interrogated in terms of the conversation that Paul and Karen would have had a little while ago.
All right. 14 minutes after 7 o'clock, let's say good morning, good night to the Minister of Works and Transport, Mr. Rohan Sinanan. Morning to you. How are you?
Recording in progress.
Good morning. Good morning to your host. Good morning to Trinidad and Tobago.
All right. Morning to you. Of course, you're the man of the moment these days.
Well, it comes with a job.
Mm-hmm. You must get stressed every time rain is an adverse alert comes out, Minister, because it stresses me out because I hate rain, but there are much bigger ramifications for you with regard to the infrastructure and the woes that people face.
Well, I mean, it's part of the job. The Ministry of Works is really the highways division, the drainage. We have 12 units. We have about 16 state enterprises. We have about, several agencies and so on under the ministry. The dry season, we try to push a lot of work. The rainy season, we have to, kind of be prepared for, the adverse weather. And so it's just something that goes with the job. We recognize what is happening around the world. We are not immune to that. This is why we have a very aggressive drainage program in the dry season. But the effects of climate change, the effects of the infrastructure that we have, which would have been in place over the last 70, 80 years, obviously will be very challenged going forward based on this new weather pattern. But I can tell you, I was out there after 11 o'clock last night at the Abattoir Road, where we seem to have a problem for the last 4 days, flooding going into Port of Spain, which I think we would have resolved last night. It's just something that goes with the job.
Are there any concerns today? Because we are still under an adverse alert, weather alert, for today until 8 p.m., I believe, tonight. Are there any concerns with certain infrastructure today with regard to that alert that you are minded?
About it is that we are prepared for the entire rainy season because you really don't know what can happen. The weather can just change on you just like that. We have, once the rainy season starts, we actually spot out equipment. We ensure that all the pumps and everything are manned properly. We have the diesels and everything like that. And we constantly clean blockage because although you would have an aggressive cleaning in the dry season, it continues into the rainy season. And then as the rains come down, certain areas will get blocked and so. So we constantly keep cleaning. Yesterday, I can tell you we were cleaning Port of Spain because once you have that water coming down from the hill, some of the underground channels will be blocked. Unfortunately, we still have a culture in Trinidad where we do a lot of dumping and water courses. We leave things on the side of the road and the water will bring it into the channels and so. So it's just a constant work. And, you know, our infrastructure would have stand up pretty well so far. We had some minor hiccups, which we overcome. I understand there's a problem now on the Manzalena stretch going into the Cocal. The team have been up there yesterday. I'm sure they will work vigorously to get that back opened up maybe within a week or so, if so long. And so far, our infrastructure is holding up. Wherever there have been slippages and so on, there have been quite a lot. The team was able to overnight make sure that connectivity is maintained. And that is basically the aim. The aim is to make sure no part of the country is really cut off for any space of time.
Yeah. Well, I know in that Manzanilla Road collapse that would have taken place yesterday, of course, I know the representatives to the area, Mr. Jutaram and Rushton Parry, would have indicated that they felt it was because of a development that changed the water course. Do you have any facts regarding to that, or was that?
No. I mean, if they have information, the thing about it is that the corporation has the authority to move in on any development. And I keep hearing Mr. Richard talking, whenever I see flooding or development, he fails to realize that the corporation has the responsibility if something, if somebody has done something illegal that he can act. And ask for show cause or show proof that look, this is like that. At the ministry level, we have no information to that level. As a matter of fact, I have asked the drainage division to go in and investigate every single water course to see if anything was blocked or anything like that. So I await that report from the drainage division through the permanent secretary.
Minister Sutherland,
that every water course be inspected based on that.
Minister Sutherland, good morning.
No.
One of the issues that has come up in recent times, and I think the Prime Minister may have alluded to it in some regard, is the issue of maintenance of some of the more vulnerable areas. Is that an issue?
The thing about it is our infrastructure, again, was not built to cater for this sort of downpour. No infrastructure in the world, as a matter of fact, could prepare itself for no flooding or anything like that. And that is why flooding is taking place around the world. What we find that we're getting now, we're actually getting some downpour, which you normally get 1 in 100 years. You're actually getting that very often. Private developments, and so the regulation basically is that you cater for a 1 in 25 year storm, meaning the amount of water that you cater for. And the normal project, the government would have catered for a 1 in 50 year storm. What we find happening now is that throughout the rainy season, you are getting the sort of downpour that you would get in a 1 in 50 year storm, 1 in 100 year storm now. And that is posing a challenge. So what has to happen going forward? We have to revisit the way we design everything. Accept the fact that there is a change in the climate, there's a change in the weather pattern, and what would have worked before will not work today. If you look in terms of take for instance the Manzanilla Road, that road is actually built on the sand. Once you have a water going through sand, you will find that kind of damage taking place. You look at some of our bridges that will be toppling and so, because they were not built for this volume of water that is coming down now from the mountains and the general rainfall on the whole. So we actually have to revisit the standards that we look building infrastructure going forward while we try to improve what is actually on the ground. There's a challenge in improving what is on the ground. If you look at our water courses and so, we maintain the same water courses over the last 50 or 60 years. In some cases, a lot of these water courses would have been people would have built on the bank of the rivers, and so people would have built, especially in the East-West corridor, right up to the water channel. So there's really no room to expand them. And then the volume of water would have increased significantly. So how you deal with that? we try to change all the culverts and so to move the water as fast as possible. But when you get these downpours, that's why you're getting a lot of little flash flooding now. But what we try to maintain, the clean water courses so that the water will run off very fast. And that is what we see happening. We had a challenge in Port of Spain where at the Abattoir Road there, the water actually stayed up for about 4 days. But last night, we recognized that there is a water problem. And as we were pumping the water, more water was actually coming in. We had to bring in more pumps to clear the road and see exactly where that water was coming in from. And we were able to solve that problem last night.
What was the water problem?
Well, we're waiting for water to give us a report on it, but we were seeing water coming back into the roadway from some water lines. But
there was a leak of some kind, that's what you're saying?
They came out last night to try to solve that problem. Because normally in the Abattoir Road, our pumps, they are sufficient to take the water out within a half an hour or so, but we found that we had to spend about 4 days. Now, bearing in mind there was a lot more rain in the last 2 weeks, but that would have contributed to the sustained amount of water on the roadway. But it was cleared last night after I left at 11 o'clock. And I'm hoping that this morning, we shouldn't be, at least we were able to identify the problem.
The issue of the stolen, is it sluice gate and other pump issues? Could you elaborate a little bit for us and how that is impacting those floods?
That again would throw us back a bit because once the tide, the tide is high and the river, that St. Anne's River, the water rise there's the opportunity that the water will backflow into our pump system. We have been trying to control that to an extent until we get another gate to put in there. These gates are not sold. You have to actually order them, custom them, and so we are trying to work one of the older gates that we have to reconfigure the size of it to fit in there. Meanwhile, we're trying to control the water. In terms of the pumps, because the both pump sites have been vandalized, we actually have substitute pumps working there. The capacity of the substitute pumps may not, or definitely not as large as the ones that were designed for the area, but we actually use 3 pumps during the course of the last 2 weeks there. But we have substitute pumps, mobile pumps that we actually bring into until we get the original pumps back up and running.
I know that you've done a lot of work, or the ministry and yourself have done a lot of work regarding the clearing of the Arangways and those rivers feeding into the Caroni, based on the tragic issues we had a couple of years ago, where basically Bamboo and the Grand Bazaar interchange was almost underwater. Are you concerned about that sort of scenario, given the amount of rain we're having in a short period moving forward?
Well, again, it all depends on the volume of rainfall that we get. I mean, that Bamboo area is really, again, a low area that takes water from the St. Joseph River that comes down. We did a lot of work on the St. Joseph River, and we still have a lot more work to do. We have upgraded a lot of the drains. We rebuilt a lot of the berms, and so along the river. Then you have the Caroni River that is running right there. Once the Caroni is filled, there are certain areas in the past that the water was allowed to breach in. Those areas no longer exist because they have all been commercialized and so. So our job is to make sure that with the breaches on the different rivers, we keep that intact. We have our pumps and everything working. And we try our best to maintain the water courses as clear as possible so that we can have a very quick runoff once the tide drops. Now remember, we actually get the 2 tides every day. And depending on the volume of water that is on the land, the amount that will run off is really determined by really the tide that we get into the ocean, because all the water actually has to go. The Caroni River runs all the way from Arimas, coming all the way down into Sealots, and that takes all the water from the east-west corridor. If the Caroni is filled and you have a high tide, the runoff is very, very slow. And that is where, the challenge comes for us. Once the tide is low, the water will continue to run off. But once the tide rises, we have to monitor the time if the rainfall is there during that. That's where the challenge is for us. And you
This
can't
may
really
be,
keep pumping if the rivers are filled because you'll just
yeah,
be, recircling the water all the time.
this may be wishful thinking, but has any consideration been given, coming back to Port of Spain, about a more expansive project to deal with because the lower part of Port of Spain, talking about the southern part, is basically under sea level, and depending on the tide and the amount of water coming, it's going to end up having challenges. An expansive kind of vision for some sort of dam or
Yeah.
some sort of.
And the answer to that is yes. Some time ago, between that 2010, 2015 period, I remember when I went in, there was a unit there that actually was doing this big study for the IDB to try to solve this problem. Unfortunately, that project had failed. The designs and when the IDB came in, they said that will not solve the problem. We have now re-engaged the Andean Development Bank, who actually is doing some work for us under some grant funding. And then we actually got a loan recently. Part of that is to revisit that whole Port of Spain area and come up with some workable solutions, not just plans and so to put on the shelf, but some workable solutions to try to get that water out of Port of Spain. The answer to it is really, different pump sites and different areas, and see how we could trap the water in the high tide and so, and then, have that water then pumped into the sea. Yes, that study is going on. One of the challenges in Port of Spain is that the Port of Spain have evolved into this big major city. A lot of the utilities are not planned in Port of Spain. A lot of the underground drains are not mapped properly in Port of Spain. And that is what posed the challenge for us. But yes, there's a plan. You have to deal with it. You can't just leave it like that. Because what is going to happen in 5 years, in 10 years from now, if we leave it just like that? I don't know the weather pattern. I mean, your guess is as good as mine if the weather pattern will improve. But based on the science that we're seeing, based on what we see happening around the world, it is poised to get worse. So as a country, that is why we engage the consultants, the international consultants, working with our local team here to come up with workable solutions to improve our drainage network throughout the country. And you will definitely see a lot of work on that aspect starting in January, because we have gotten a lot of information from them and a lot of work plans and so already. And you would recognize last week the Minister of Finance got some funding from the Andean Development Bank that is supposed to go into flooding eradication.
Yeah. The issue of if we look at some of the infrastructure issues that crop up, that seem to be cropping up more and more and more, and I know there's an issue with the road infrastructure, which the Prime Minister has attempted to explain in terms of saying that work will soon begin. But I know Tamana has had that problem. That Guayco-Tamana road has been an issue for years that has been discussed on this radio program that predates even COVID. And of course, there's now a big issue there with protests.
Guayco-Tamana road have predated, the problems on that predates me. Yeah. I was born and I grew up in that area. And it's an area that is prone to landslips because of the soil type in the area. It's an area that you always have a challenge with the road network. You improve the road network, and then after a year, 2 years, you see a lot of collapse. And so it all has to do with the soil type in the area. That area is also a very heavily traversed area. A lot of people don't know that, but it is. So we do have a lot of landslips taking place, and within the last couple of months, a lot of the repaired landslips gave away again because, again, there's constant land movement. But we do have a lot of plans for that area. I spoke to the MP, the Member of Parliament, and he understands the challenges we have there. That is one of the reasons why that new highway from Wallerfield to Sandy Grande, that will help us significantly, because once you take a lot of the traffic off the original road, then you'll be able to repair the road in a much better standard rather than just having repave, because the answer to the infrastructure in Trinidad is just simply not repaving the road. We have a major challenge with WASA lines. Once you have land movement, WASA lines will pop. And once the WASA line pops in these clay soil, it just within 12 hours, it will wash away an entire area. So the whole method we use to construct roads and so is something that we're revisiting now. A lot of our roads evolve over time. They were cut on ridges and so. And once you have soil movement like what is taking place now, you will constantly get landslips and so. We have probably over additional 200 landslips developed this year alone because of the amount of rainfall. We are looking now at a new system for preventative method to address and attack landslips early. Once we see signs that a landslip is going to be formed, we start to
generally.
Our BLT unit, which is really in, that have been formed to deal with bridges and landslip, they're going to expand now to have a preventative line for landslips. And we're looking at attacking areas that are prone to landslip at a very early stage. You actually using, the old time method of replanting trees and so on towards some of these hills.
The issue of road infrastructure generally, which is a problem across the country in towns and cities and villages. And I know the government has indicated that they are going to go on to a huge road reconstruction drive that is funded, I think, by CAF. You could correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, we are going on a drive. The Minister of Finance, where he gets the funding from, that's really a Ministry of Finance department. What we actually utilize is really the funding that is allocated to us. This year, we have gotten some funding for road rehabilitation, and then, as you're aware, the government will form a secondary roads company. They too will be looking at the local government roads. So where the ministry will be concentrating more on the highways and the main roads and giving technical assistance to the new company. You'll actually have two major entities now doing road rehabilitation around the country. So we can now push on with the budget that we would have gotten and the government on the Ministry of Works road, meaning the highways and the main roads and so, and the secondary roads company will be dealing with the secondary roads and within the towns and cities and residential areas and so.
When can people start expect to see these sort of works beginning?
We are ready to go, but with this weather pattern, we have actually stopped some of our existing work. Only yesterday I had a meeting with the team. We're supposed to have about 70 ongoing jobs right now. Because of the inclement weather, we actually have to put a hold on that. So yesterday they showed me where once we get some sort of closure to this rainy season, we should have at least 200 projects ongoing at the ministry level alone on the road network. And that is quite a lot, because the one thing you don't want to do is to clog the network with a lot of heavy trucks and so just blocking up roads and doing pavements and landslips and so all at the same time, because we have to pace the work out. Because you really don't want to, to create a bigger problem on the road network going forward. So we are ready and poised to go, but we can't do this sort of work with the weather that we're getting now.
And the issue of the special purpose company to deal with local government roads, when are they initializing?
Well, I wouldn't want to talk too much on that company. As you know, that is under the Ministry of Rural Development. But from my information, is that they are also in a position that once they get the good weather, they should be able to hit the ground running.
Okay.
All right, Minister, let me ask you a question. In the Grand River area recently, with a lot of riverine flood alerts, part of the beach in Grand River, which is the second most popular beach in the world for the leatherback turtles, it has started to erode. Are there any plans to put blockages in that river as it comes out to the sea?
Boulders, it's difficult to interfere with the natural flow of the river. You remember some years ago, the ministry went in there and they tried to bring some sort of diversion of the river, and it affected the leatherback turtles, and the EMA had to step in. The water that comes down into that area, you have to let it flow, because the water will cut its own channel to get out into the ocean. It's a very challenging area. The ministry is constantly monitoring it, but it's not an area where, because of the turtles and that lays there, you cannot just go and start to upset the soil and everything in that area. The ministry did attempt that some years ago and was stopped by the EMA. And even what they were trying to do would not have saved the area, because the sort of rainfall you get on that area there, the water will cut its own channels to get into the ocean. It is a challenging area. What we are actually doing right now, from all the way up to Matlock, we have the coastal unit, the drainage unit, the PO unit, and the highways unit, and the BLT, the bridges. They are doing a comprehensive review of that entire area all the way to Matlock to tie into the whole infrastructure development for that area. And very soon, we are going to start some project. What is happening up there is that the ocean is actually cutting on the hill, and that is pulling down the road in several areas. The constant banging of the ocean against the rocks have started to deteriorate the toe on that entire coast. And that is what is causing a lot of the landslips and the pulling down of the road. The road actually is in fact the bottom almost in the water that is moving because of the constant pounding. And that is actually pulling down everything. We have some serious challenge up there, but we are coming with a program that includes the rebuilding of all the bridges. I think we have about four remaining bridges up there to rebuild, but we have to build them as we go along, because you can't, like some of the bridges in Matlock, we want to rebuild them. They're wooden bridges still. But remember, to move the equipment, we have to rebuild all the bridges leading to Matlock. So I think we have 4 bridges now on the program. And then I think 2 after that, and then we would have replaced all the bridges going to Matlock. But there's a lot of work to be done on that side. And we are creating a program just for that coast, because it's not just the road infrastructure, it's coastal erosion. It's the whole rivers and so that we have to monitor, because if we don't, the whole natural area could be lost, and we really don't want to do that. We don't want to interfere too much with the natural area, but we have to do certain things to ensure that there's access and so in that area.
All right. I have another question for you, and this really is to the quality of work by the contractors. Yes, I saw your news last night, and yes, some of these roads really need to be built, but when we resurface the roads, sometimes they don't last long. Are you guys, is the ministry looking at the quality of work by the construction companies on paving roads?
All right. So recently I would have announced that we're working now with the IDB, where one of the things that we're doing, we're revisiting the mix that we use on our roads. Because we have to make sure that the mix that we're using, they have specification. When you get a contract, you will have to bring your material and so to test. Because you have certain guidelines and certain standards you have to meet. We are revisiting that to make sure that we're on the right track. So we have engaged the IDB, we're working with Lake Asphalt, and so we have also moved away now from the ministry roads, where we'll be using PLA, which is a much more superior cement produced by Lake Asphalt in Trinidad. It is normally used only on the highways, and use it like on airport runways, and so we are actually bringing in that now into all the roads under the Ministry of Works and Transport once available. So that will give us a more steady surface. When we do a contract for say road paving, the material has to be tested before you do the mix and after you do the mix. Sometimes material will fail after you put it down. There's always a defect liability period. And sometimes you may see a road being paved, and 6 months after you see it being paved again. That is because the road would have failed, the material would have failed, and the contractor has to do it over at his cost. That happens very often. There's a defect liability based on the type of road pavement. It could go up to a year, that you have to guarantee the road for a year, and anything happen within that time. And we do enforce that. In terms of standard, the ministry does have our own lab where we test material. If you're doing concrete work, every truckload that you put on, you have to do a test on it. We have to test the temperature. We have to do everything, especially on the major highways and so. Asphalt lane, similar. You have to get your material tested before. You can't just use any aggregate in the material. We are giving you specifications. It's tested before and it's tested after. Because when you're mixed, something could go wrong. And once the material fails, you have to dump the material. And I don't know if people are aware that that happens on a regular. You have to dump it at the cost of the contractor. And if the work fails during the defect liability period, you have to do it over. I am not saying that everything that goes down is perfect. It is something that, we constantly keep monitoring, especially work done by the Ministry of Works. And if it fails, then the contractor is called upon. If you find that happening on the highway, somebody will say, but that just failed last week. It could fail. Nobody's saying it can't. And if it fails during the defect period, you have to do it over.
What about overweight trucks? Because I recall a while back the trucks were pulled over and most of them were overweight. We've heard of weigh stations on the side of the road and so on, but nothing has really come out of that.
No, we have right now 4 stations all up and running in Trinidad. 4. We have one at Golconda. We have one at Rising Road. We have one at Aqua Santa up in Arima. And there's one at Caroni. From time to time, the officers will go out. I know just recently they had about 4 exercises where they go out. What we're doing now, we are trying to install 3 more scales on the highway. So we're working on that. We have tightened up the legislation. If a truck is overweight now, I think the fine is about $8,000. And we are seeing some improvement. What we're not seeing improvement in is a lot of these heavy trucks. They have been licensed for certain routes. And what we find is a lot of these trucks are not sticking to the routes they're licensed for. And that is contributing significantly to the damage of the road network. And that is something that we are working on now, to have these trucks, once you're caught off route, to have that license revoked. Because that is causing a problem. We have a lot of trucks now at residential areas spending the night there. And that was never licensed to be like that. If you get a license for heavy, these big trucks, you're supposed to provide the spot where the truck is staying in the night and so, to make sure that the truck isn't hampering anybody's driveway. So those are things that we're really going to be clamping down on, and more important, the weight and the route that these trucks are supposed to take. Because you see some little back roads and then you see the trucks speeding through the back road. The first instance, they're not even supposed to be on those back roads. Those back roads were never designed for that kind of weight. So we are really working on that. We have 4 scales all up, working, calibrated, and I can tell you the license officers are utilizing them.
Can you give me an update on the stretch of road from Valencia heading to Toco Main Road that has been built for the last 5 years or so?
Well, yeah, we started that work at actually the end of 2017. The problem that we have up there is that work is actually going through a lot of quarry land and it's a lot of water. Now, we have been getting some ridiculous amount of rainfall in that area, so much so that we actually had to pull the contractors off and say, look, it doesn't make sense, because they will go out to work today, this morning starts up good, and then by lunchtime, a lot of rain. What has to happen there is just really final paving, and one of the package has a little work to do. Once we get some good weather, my information from the PR unit is that we have about 6 weeks work to finish that entire road network. What we did up there wasn't just a road paving; it was a total rebuilding of the road network up there. If you ever pass there, you'd see it's right now it's up to a single lane highway standard with proper lighting, shoulders, and the width of the road have been transformed. But it's a rebuilding of the road, and the challenge we got up there was actually water. Because a lot of the areas, and that is why, for as long as you can go back, that area was just prone with landslips because there's a lot of underground springs in the area. We had to deal with those challenges. That would take a lot longer than anticipated. However, once the job is completed, it will definitely be a very good product. And again, once we get some good weather, there's no reason why we can't push on in that area. Remember, COVID would have taken us out for about 2 years on jobs like that.
Okay, yeah, because
if we get 6 weeks of good weather, you'll see a significant transformation on that road. Some of the contractors have decided, look, let us stop until the weather pattern change, because there's nothing you can do in this kind of weather in terms of infrastructure. It'll just create a bigger problem, especially for commuters who use the road.
Okay, and before you go, by the Barataria turnoff on the eastbound lanes, when it rains, there's a stream of water that is right across the highway. I've seen a car actually spin and slam into a lamppost. Is anything being done regarding the drainage?
Yeah. Well,
I know that's a drainage issue.
I spoke to them that we have to make sure that, all these, sometimes there's these little weep holes on the highway. And at something like that could simply be a weep hole being blocked or something being blocked. Whatever you just told me, I will have them visit that to see what is the cause of that.
Yeah, and also I should add
on the highway.
I should add
the highways are designed to have a proper runoff of water, and if that is happening in an area, it has to simply mean that something is probably blocked and the water is not getting into the drainage that is provided.
Yeah, because it just streams right across the highway. And I mean, just add.
This is the Barataria. Which part is Barataria?
This is on the highway as the way exit to going into Barataria, eastbound, right that area.
Okay.
And as I say that, you need to get your crews out as you on the left lane heading into Barataria. Just before you get to the turnoff, there are 3 potholes. Well, 3 lakes that on the Betham Highway on the left lane, just before the turnoff.
Yes. I last night
I hit that Monday, boy. Oh, geez, on ages, I get headache.
Looking at that, coming down there. I will have them address that.
Yeah,
Minister, 2 things before you leave. One, that overpass coming into Port of Spain from the Betham Highway, that is in a state of disrepair. Who's responsible for that?
It has to be. Once it's the highway, it has to be the Ministry of Works. When you say
the one when you're coming down the highway heading west,
the one by NP,
the one by NP. No, not the one. That one, but also the one heading to Barataria, the Barataria roundabout. Those 2 are terrible.
All right, I'll have them. I'll have they're supposed to be inspectors inspecting all these things. So if you tell me that, I'll have to.
And just for clarity, who's responsible for the main roads in Port of Spain?
That's the city corporation.
Okay, thank you.
That's your boys.
Wendell Stephen. You can say his name. He's listening.
Yes,
they like to blame the Ministry of Works, but I understand it's there.
Inner city roads are the responsibility of the city corporations. The main road, like let's say, you're coming down the highway and so
Ryston Road,
Mukarap Road, Ryston Road, yes, those are the Ministry of Works.
Okay, thank you.
Inner city roads are really the responsibility.
But those 2 overpasses, one going to Barataria from the highway heading west, and the one coming into Port by NP are in terrible states of disrepair. Particularly as you go the off ramp, you can almost drive into the man and you don't know.
Yeah.
I will have them visit that.
Yeah, because when you exit the Barataria flyover by NP, and not the Barataria, when you exit the Betham to get into that flyover by NP, the left lane is once it rains like now, it has a ton of water.
Oh,
so everybody.
You're talking about the side roads, to take it to the
Well, that is one to take the ramp, but then the flyover itself is absolutely horrendous.
Yes, okay. I will.
And it floods. Yeah, it floods. The left lane and that flyover itself floods.
I will have them check that. If it's something like that, it has to be like a week hole or something like that. And this is what we have inspectors for. A lot of people say, look, the minister, but we have inspectors and they support. That's why I had to
but are the inspectors doing their job though?
And that is one of your problems. People need to be held accountable. I had that conversation with them this week. That is why we have some advertisements in the newspaper now, and we're just not just renewing officers or promoting just like that. Once the law permits, we will advertise to make sure we get the best person in the job, because sometimes I feel people get a little too complacent in their job, especially when they I mean, I shouldn't be saying this on air, but sometimes when people get into the public service, they get a little too complacent because, you know, it's almost impossible to have them removed. And I have been having this conversation with them. This week I had to be a different sort of individual because it boxed up to the minister. But I don't think people understand that the minister's hands are tied in terms of, you know, getting the staff to do what they're supposed to do. Sometimes I
that's why you have a PS.
But it is something that you know we have to deal with. But there's systems to deal with it.
Paul said that is why you have a PS.
Yeah, and I mean sometimes I feel like I'm coming on my PS a little too harsh, but as she's fully aware that as minister I cannot really deal directly with the staff, so I have to really deal through her. But you know, it's really a work in progress to get people to do what they're being paid to do.
Yeah,
but one bad apple can spoil the whole team, because if you have somebody in charge of something and they're not pulling their weight, then it affects the whole chain going down the line. And you know, I can tell you most of the staff are willing to work, they're willing to do what they have to do, but there are some bad eggs in the pack.
All right,
Minister,
Yeah.
I just before you go, just one last question. One of our listeners is sending a message to me. They're saying if there is a plan to alleviate the traffic congestion by the Caroni roundabout, the roundabout is 2 lanes and a third lane merges from Caroni Savannah Road into a single lane to cross the river.
Well, but yes, as a matter of fact, Mr. Dan, they figured one of your very good listeners.
That name sounds familiar.
Yes. He is our traffic engineer. Now he's the acting the director of traffic. He have been clamoring for that on the program. We are trying to get that done as soon as possible because we identified that as a major bottleneck. So we are looking at traffic alleviation as a separate issue from the actual road rehabilitation now, because it is nice to build highways. That helps with the traffic. It is good till you have to repair the roads, but outside the highways, we do have a massive build-up of traffic, and we have to have a program going hand in hand with the road rehabilitation for traffic alleviation, because we have to balance it all. We have to build highways, but we have to improve the existing road network, and we have to deal with the internal traffic, because when you come off the highway, and you go down into a single lane road, or you know where there's traffic, it almost defeats the purpose of actually moving people on the highway faster. So we are looking at the whole network. We're looking at the Maloney area, where you actually have people that, you know, you have to actually stay on the highway to swing right to get back into Maloney. So we're looking at the Tunpuna interchange, all the interchange going down with. Saying that we're going to build big interchange to improve the existing network we have. We're looking at one of the major projects we're looking at is that highway going to South with their median, where we have been spending a lot of money just cutting grass, fixing cable barriers. How do we turn that into an active, you know, lane to utilize, like the bus route, where we could have mass transportation from Port of Spain all the way to San Fernando, just like we have on the bus route, just for buses and so. And maxi taxis.
Yeah,
we are looking at traffic alleviation as well.
I have said that Solomon Hotrai Highway has outlived its 2 lanes from Chaguanas to South and vice versa.
Yeah.
It is certainly as out, because someone took 4 hours from Mova Junction to Couva on the other day. This week.
The thing about it is that we have to, we sometimes we have to balance the work with the budget that is allocated. But there is a plan to extend that to the 3 lanes all the way to San Fernando. But more than that, what we're looking at right now is to see how we could bring into that highway HOV, so that we could have vehicles just like the bus route, where buses now could traverse that, and maxi taxis. And if we take those 2 types of vehicles off the highway and move people in much larger numbers, that too will help with the traffic problem.
Yeah,
Traffic alleviation is a separate program that we're working on, and we have quite a few pure projects in different areas. See, just like what we did at the MOVA interchange. By widening it up, putting in drainage and so, there's a much a smoother flow. I mean, it's not the answer. The answer would have been to put a flyover there and remove all the lights, but you don't have the space. But by doing simple things, we have improved the flow of traffic in that area.
Yeah, I will agree to that.
Another area and have a bottleneck. But over time, the idea is to try to eliminate all these bottlenecks and try to improve. But the answer to traffic is not like just billing yourself out of it. We have to find a way for mass transportation in Trinidad and an effective and efficient mass transportation system.
Well, I know Wendell and I have always been fans of the monorail system, but that seems to have been shelved. The issue of the Point Fortin Highway, what is the completion date?
Again, once the weather permits, the majority of that highway will definitely be open next year. There are one or two little areas that have given us some challenges, but that will not delay the fact that you should be able to traverse from San Fernando all the way to Point Fortin in a very short. So there are one or two areas that because of the nature of that. Remember, we were going through a lot of oil sand and so in that area. Then you have the creek. The bill over the creek is really, have posed a challenge. But despite the challenges that they have, I am very confident that sometime next year, we will be driving all the way from San Fernando to Point Fortin. But you can actually drive, although the road is not finished and handed over on most of it already. What they're doing now, they're doing lights and the final touches and so to have other segments open.
When can we expect the Macoya intersection to begin in terms of being done?
That is really right now before the cabinet. So I wouldn't really want to speak on that Macoya interchange at this point in time, but we are in the process of doing all the designs, the EMA approvals, and so that the project continues in terms of the statutory requirements at this stage, in terms of when you'll actually see boots on the ground. Really and truly, to be honest with you, I really want to push improving the road network, the quality of the roads and so at this point in time, while we do all the statutory requirements for that. We have to work again with traffic alleviation and road repairs at the same time, but we have to balance it to make sure that, a lot of the funding goes into the existing road network as well to improve that.
All right. Anything else you want to add before we close, Minister?
No, just to let the population know that we are getting serious challenges with the weather. We are seeing we have social media now, so anything happen, any part of Trinidad is being posted and given the impression, well, look, the road network is collapsing. As of yesterday, there was no part of this country that was closed off. Some areas, because of slippage and so, there were some challenges. Last night, I had to send to the MP for Labre some pictures where he had sent me yesterday morning and said, look, if this road isn't repaired, this part will cut off. I sent him last night to show no, the road was actually repaired last night. We will continue to make sure the entire country is connected based on the challenges that we have in terms of the weather. There's no part of the country that is cut off at this point in time. Even the Manzalina, where we have this challenge that popped up yesterday, we will make sure that road is reinstated immediately, while the other routes to get to the Mayaro and other areas remain open. So our job and our duty is to make sure no part of the country is cut off. And as I said, once we get some dry weather, you will see a massive change in the road network in terms of landslips. And so we do have several programs now just about to kick off and to deal with this landslip problem around the country.
All right. Minister Ryan Cinnamon, thank you so much for being on the Power Breakfast Show this morning. Thanks for spending some time with us. Appreciate it. It's been a while.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.
All right. All the best to you.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. Of course, as I said, that was Minister Rohan Cinnamon being with us on the Power Breakfast Show this morning. Let's get into our 8 o'clock news brief, all powered by Champlain Auto Services.
This is your news bulletin from Power 102 Digital.
There is a plan to address the drainage